Oh gosh, no.
Oh, okay.
In the end, I would have some expired ones I'm doing to or whatever.
Life wasn't gonna change at that point.
Thanks, Andrew, I just saw it here. Matt came in. Did you just make it right now?
Your bench.
Your bench, Matt. I was like, did you just make it right now? Yeah, I don't care.
It works, right?
Yeah, it works. No, it's totally fine.
The discussion was already had, the map just wasn't
Yeah.
made.
Well, you're like, I don't know where it went, so.
Well,
Fast
there
find.
was a map, but it wasn't,
I know. All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Please join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Turn the wrong way again.
All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Pasco,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Conrad. Any further discussion? Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Pasco.
Aye.
Councilmember Conrad.
Aye.
Councilmember Sayer.
Aye.
Councilmember Pershman.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. We don't have anyone here this evening for community comment, but we do have Paul Moline here to talk about the Carver County WMO. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Mayor, members of the council, I just thought kind of go through, really it's kind of a high level background of what the Carver County Water Management Organization does, why we exist, and then probably the most important thing is how we collaborate with the city and maybe what we can do to enhance that moving forward. So I've got about 16 slides here and I'll go through them. Please interrupt me if you've got any questions and I can answer anything at the end too.
Sounds good.
Okay, so little background. Minnesota statute 103B was adopted, started in the 1980s, kind of followed the watershed district piece of the statute, but really what it did was formalize a lot of the water management in the Twin Cities metro area, so the 7-county area. And this map kind of shows a mosaic and patchwork of what resulted from that. There's a number of watershed districts and water management organizations that came out of that process. In Carver County, that green area, up until the late 90s, was made up of 6 different WMOs, water management organizations, each one representing a different creek or sub-watershed in that area, Carver Creek, Bevins. There were 2 in Chaska. And at that time, the state looked at those organizations. They were just joint powers agreements between cities and townships, and they weren't really effective. The cities and townships weren't agreeing to do anything together. So the state said, all right, county, it's yours. You decide what to do with it. And at that point, the county board said, we're just going to incorporate that into county government and not form a separate watershed district. The board thought at the time that the watershed district really just creates another layer of government that could be more inefficient, is more confusing to folks. So that happened here in Carver. It happened in Scott County at the same time. And then there's one watershed in Dakota County. So you see those in green. These are water management organizations. And again, the rest of the metro is kind of split up. Probably the one you're most familiar is maybe Minnehaha Creek is a watershed district, and that's Lake Minnetonka, but they're their own entity with their own board. So within Carver County, this is the area the water management organization covers. It covers most of the cities and townships in the county. Again, does not cover those areas that are watershed districts. So Minnehaha Creek in Victoria and Chanhassen, Riley Purgatory Bluff Creek Watershed District, which is in Chanhassen. Lower Minnesota Watershed District, which is portions of Chanhassen, Chaska, and the City of Carver. And then there's little pieces out in the western part of the county that are a watershed district as well. Kind of zooming into the city quick, maybe you saw this a couple weeks ago, but a big chunk of the city has been covered by the Lower Minnesota River Watershed District for 60 years. The lines are arbitrary. As you can tell, they just follow political boundaries. At the time, it was really most of the city of Carver when this was formed in the 1960s. Since that time, obviously, the city's expanded. The areas outside of that are in the water management organization. And really, almost all your growth area moving forward will be in the water management organization. We have had discussions on and off with Lower Minnesota River Watershed District about changing this boundary. State statute talks about hydrologic boundaries as being the way to form these watersheds, and this is the one watershed, and I think Will shared that a couple weeks ago, that really doesn't fit any of those definitions. So ongoing discussions there, and we'll kind of see where those lead.
Do you have any maps that show what those hydrologic boundaries are?
Well, it's difficult for Lower Minnesota River because, you know, their charge is the river itself.
Mhm.
So you could, we have some options where it's like, okay, there's areas that drain directly to the Minnesota River and don't go to Spring Creek first, for
Mhm.
example, or Carver Creek or Chaska Creek. So you could draw some boundaries based on that. You could say, well, the boundary is the river. You could say the boundary is the floodplain. There's lots of different options that I think the state would entertain.
Okay.
But yeah, because it's so unique, there's not like one water boundary that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
And if I remember correctly, part of the maneuvering there too is that the more logical you make that boundary, the less property taxes tend to be included within it for the Lower Minnesota. It tends to pick up less and less
Yes, correct.
property
Yeah,
taxes.
in most of the scenarios, it'd be a smaller area within Carver County.
Yeah.
And then as you get into Scott and the other counties, it's different as well. But Carver County is the smallest portion of the district in the metro. And the intent originally was that there was gonna be barge traffic to the city of Carver to dredge the channel, and there was gonna be businesses up here that would utilize that, and that never happened. So that dredging channel got all the way up to City Savage, and then it never got any further upstream.
Cause you said they put this in the 60s, so they thought in the 60s still this was gonna be barge traffic?
Yeah,
Okay.
that someone was gonna have a need for the river up to the, you know, the city of Carver and be able to get barges up here and transport goods.
Okay.
It just never happened. So just kind of some facts about the WMO. I'm just gonna, and when I say WMO, I'm gonna short it here, so we're not saying this. It's about 320 square miles. There are 35 lakes, 365 miles of streams. Like I said, this contains these other watersheds that were self-organized before that. So it's 6 different watersheds. The county board is the WMO authority, so there's not a separate, you know, in watershed districts, they have their own board. The county board is the authority. They approve and adopt the plan as well as the watershed-wide ad valorem tax. So there's a separate tax levy for the watershed that funds the work that we do. And that is similar to the watershed districts. They also have, each one of them have their own tax levy. There's an advisory committee that makes recommendations to the county board. As you can imagine, the board has a lot of things to talk about on a weekly basis. This just being a very small piece, so they do rely on the recommendations of staff and the advisory committee. And thank you to Councilmember Pasco for serving on that group for 4.5 now?
4.5 years
All right.
now.
The program areas that the WMO covers, so I'm just gonna mostly talk about the ones in sort of the darker blue, but these are all the program areas: education, monitoring, permitting, projects, planning, aquatic invasive species, and then administration. I won't talk a lot about administration tonight because it's more of a boring topic, if you can imagine. No offense. A lot of the work I do is like this stuff that nobody really wants to Education program. So this is one of the first things that WMO did. We hired an education coordinator as our first hire back in the early 2000s. Some of you might know Madeline. She's been out here at events. And really this is kind of the foundation of getting the word out to citizens, businesses, stakeholders, elected leaders about the importance of just water in general and why we care about clean water, what it takes to get clean water in our lakes and streams and creeks, what it takes to take care of that. So our education program ranges all the way from K through 12 to adults, and again, all the stakeholders in between. Some examples of that in City of Carver, Madeline's been out to the Public Works open house. I know in the past she's been to Steamboat Days. I think that's been a few years now. She does mailers to city residents. We've done that on stormwater pond care and maintenance, what they mean, what you should and shouldn't do. We had a smart irrigation program called Ratio, which is providing smart controllers to residents so they irrigate only what they need and not overwater and use potable water more than they should. And then provides articles for city newsletters to City of Carver. Those are just some of the examples. Water quality monitoring, there isn't a lot that happens within the city because there's not a lot of lakes we monitor. We do monitor Carver Creek nearby. We haven't done Spring Creek in the past. We haven't been requested by Lower Minnesota to do that in the past. We do some creeks and lakes in Chaska for the Lower Minnesota Watershed District. We don't do any in Carver. But this really, we have a pretty robust monitoring program for all the lakes and streams in the county, as well as installed stormwater practices. So we're trying to ramp that up as well. We're trying to look at the effectiveness of these stormwater ponds and filtration basins over time. How long do they function? So that's a growing part of our monitoring program. The permitting program, this is probably something that we interact with the city the most on, with the development that's happening. And maybe something you've heard about more often. That permitting program focuses on three key areas. One is erosion sediment control. So once a construction site is open and the development's happened, how do you manage that dirt and sediment and material while it's open and not completed and vegetated? So you've seen some of these development sites out here masquerading a lot of open land, and if you get a large rainstorm, how is that working? So that's part of our permitting review. Stormwater treatment's probably the biggest one, where we've got rules in place that were adopted in 2001, so we're about 25 years into those rules. I think our goal there is to provide flexibility to the developers that come in and build, whether it's redevelopment or brand new. And the reason we want to do that is each development's unique, and we have standards that they need to meet, but we know that we want to give those options to the development community about how you choose how you want to get there, but you still have to get there. And those result in different types of stormwater practices, ranging from the typical ponds you see out there to stormwater reuse that's happening at elementary school, for example, where that's one of the ways they met, was using the stormwater to put it back on athletic fields, so they're not using treated city drinking water to water grass. That's worked fairly effectively. In other parts of the county, we administer the Wetland Conservation Act too. The city administers their own, but we administer the Wetland Conservation Act for the city of Victoria. They did decide that they didn't want to do that on their own and turn that over to us, so we do that as well. Just a snapshot, 2025, watershed-wide, we have about 64 stormwater permits, so that were approved. There's usually about 100 or so across the watershed that are in some kind of process, some kind of review, all the way to approval. And again, these range from really small, maybe like 1 acre or less developments that are right on a lake or stream, to the large ones that you've seen, like Timber Creek, where dozens and dozens of acres open at once. So that the approvals can sometimes can take a while, working with the development engineer and I think working with the city staff, and some of these engineers have gone through our process many times now, so those tend to go fairly smooth. It's when you get a new developer, a new engineer that hasn't done work in the county before, especially if they're coming from outstate, some of the rules and processes it takes them a little bit to kind of get up to speed. Since that 2001 timeframe when we've adopted those rules, there's about 700 stormwater practices installed across the watershed as a result of those rules that I think, in the end, really are benefiting the water bodies that we're intending to protect as the county grows rapidly. And really, it's the best spot we've seen to minimize the impacts of development is in these requirements. Just kind of jumping to projects, growing, I think, starting about 15 years ago, we really tried to shift a lot of our work into projects that either try and correct a problem or clean up a lake, try and stabilize a creek or ravine. And a lot of our funding goes to that. Like I said, we're funded by a tax levy, but for some of these projects that tend to get, fairly expensive after a while, we are really relying on state grants to get those, and our levy provides a match. We do research studies a lot of times with the state. I'll just give an example. You probably heard about the goldfish infestation in Chaska. So the state is interested in solving the problem. They want us to provide a feasibility study first before they would fund any actual implementation. So we did do that feasibility study. They helped fund that. And that's just one example moving forward. Some examples I just wanted to show you. There aren't any like big ones in the city of Carver, but some nearby. The one up in the corner. Oh, that's not gonna work. The West Creek Remeander. So there was a channel in the Chaska City Industrial Park off of 10 and 212 that was a straight ditch forever, and as part of that development, we negotiated with the city and developer to remeander that and turn it back into a natural stream. So you can see in the upper left there how that worked out, and about a year later, it's been kind of tremendous in terms of vegetation and the wildlife that's come back to that, as opposed to what was just a straight sort of agricultural ditch beforehand. Below that, East Creek daylighting, so Lyman Boulevard was being built on County Road 18 to connect Chaska and Victoria. And that section of the creek had been in a 350-foot pipe for about 50 years. And we, kind of working with the county and MnDOT funding, worked on making that an open bridge instead of keeping it in a culvert and daylighting that stream again to make it again more of a natural channel. As you can imagine, there's a lot of costs behind that, but was really pleased for that success story. There's a city trail right next to it under the bridge, so it's a very public accessible spot, and we can really promote the benefits of having a natural stream channel versus just putting everything in a pipe. And then the two on the right, Bevins Creek Dam removal. This is a little south of the city of Carver, but there was an old dam that had failed. This was about 10 years ago, started crumbling, started eroding into landowners' property around both sides, and we got some state funding to remove that and then make it a more natural system. So you can see the photo below what it looked like afterwards. The other example I want to give you project-wise is a ravine in the city of Chaska near the seminary fen. And the developments that sort of fed all the stormwater into these ravines were sort of built in the 80s and 90s and had some stormwater capacity, but not as much as what you see today. And the result of that was that ravine got overwhelmed, widened significantly, probably 3 times its original width, and then started to go up the hill backwards at just over time, all this erosion coming in. So the city got a grant from the state, and we helped contribute some money to that, although it was $1 million project that the city went for, and I think we contributed about $100,000. I want to bring this up to the council here because this is a similar landscape that City of Carver is growing into, all these ravine areas, and as, one of the importances is trying to hold as much of that stormwater on the tops of these areas before you're sending it over the side. That's one of the review components we do. Kind of in the middle of it with Enclave right now, and then as you get into Summerfield, it's gonna be the same, similar issues as that area grows. So hopefully we're preventing $1 million projects 20, 30 years from now. Planning piece, so we have a water management plan. Again, first one is adopted in around 2000, and we're moving into our 4th iteration probably next year. That is a state statute requirement that we have to have a 10-year water management plan. Coming out of that is a requirement, again, from statute that each city and entity has to have their local water management plan. The cities is within your comprehensive plan, gets adopted every 10 years. One of our roles as WMO is to review and approve that local water management plan, so that kind of happens alongside but separately from Metropolitan Council approving the comprehensive plan. And really want to work closely with city staff and engineer to, make sure that our plans are in sync, but that they're, especially on the local water management plan side, it's benefiting these water resources and not just meeting the statutory requirements and kind of checking these boxes off. Within our plan and within the city's plan too is a CIP list of projects. And again, I think that's a really good way for us to collaborate moving forward, is identifying which projects you want watershed assistance with and how much you're looking for over that 10-year period. I'll just touch on this quick. It's the Aquatic Invasive Species Program that's also part of the WMO's work. There's not a lot that happens in the city of Carver. Again, not a lot of lakes. We don't do testing within the creek right now. Haven't heard of a lot of issues, but just so you know, when you hear about zebra mussels and goldfish and carp and starry stonewort and all this other stuff, that we've got a pretty robust program right now across the watershed.
Do you find less of that in rivers because they're moving, or do you mean, would you still find it there, you guys don't test the river?
We still find it. It's not as impactful in the river as it is in lakes. Like zebra mussels, for example, we do find them in the creeks, but really where they have the most impact is in the lakes, where they affect the community as much, because they're just moving downstream. They don't really kind of find homes there.
Okay.
Some of the things that we do, I think there's probably some spots in the city of Carver are purple loop strife and Phragmites, invasive Phragmites, which can really take over areas, wetland edges, that we do some work, I think, around the city of Carver with those species. So I think, highlighting some things we collaborate with the city on, and I think some opportunities moving forward. I think we've got really good staff coordination now. We have a monthly meeting with city staff and engineer on the developments that are happening. I think there was probably some years where those meetings weren't happening and things maybe got out of sync a little bit. But I do, my perspective, things are working fairly well right now with city staff in terms of looking at those developments and having your staff understand where our comments are coming from and vice versa. And again, with a goal to try and, get these developments permitted and moving along as fast as possible, but still meeting the requirements. Site inspections, we work with the Carver Soil and Water Conservation District to do on-site site inspections. So when a site's open and we either get complaints or we're just checking on those to make sure a lot of sediment isn't running off, we do have inspectors there. And again, work with the Soil and Water Conservation District. They're their own agency, but we have a lot of collaboration with them and use their staff to do a lot of this work. And I think really problem solving, again, all these developments are unique, and each one, as we're going through the review process, different problems come up, and I think from the stormwater angle, trying to problem solve those along with city staff has been working really well. And then after the fact problems too, those always come up later on. On the planning side, we've kind of mentioned some of this, but trying to get our plan in sync with the local water management plan. We also do the comprehensive plan for the county, so we're working in sync with staff on that. And then the last one, there is a county groundwater plan as well, which we're gonna be in the process of updating next year. And trying to, I guess, isolate what are the things the county can do for groundwater management that aren't being done by other entities, whether it's the city or state agencies that manage those. Our cost share projects, you know, these are, we send out solicitation to all the cities to really request, what is it do you have any projects you need help funding with? Well, really on a year-to-year basis, so we just did that for 2027 in March. You know, a couple of years ago, we did work with the city on getting some smart salting equipment on some of your vehicles, and as far as I know, that was a success. We would be open and really requesting the city to tell us what you need and ask for money. Be afraid.
Well, we have a levy project that we're working on.
Yes.
And we're looking to close a $3 million gap, Paul.
I am aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a different size of money than we probably have, but.
I'm a, it doesn't hurt to ask
It doesn't
kind of
hurt.
We'll
person.
take $10.
Yeah. Let's start with $100,000.
And it's on the WMO right now, so that's part of it.
We'll move it if you want.
But definitely encourage you to, you know, work with us on solving some problems you need. One of the reasons you haven't had a lot of requests is, again, a lot of your issues have been on Spring Creek, which isn't in the WMO. But I think as the city keeps growing, you're gonna be finding other issues too.
Paul, can you give some examples of projects that we've cost shared with? For example, I know we've had a couple in Waconia and Victoria that we've done in the 4 years I've been on. Can you give some examples of what some of those
Yeah,
are?
so that Chaska project, Seminary Fen,
Mhm.
is one. We've done some other projects, ravine stabilizations with the city of Chaska. a
Kind of the
big
ones,
one.
the slides you just showed, right?
Yeah, that's one, but we've done some smaller ones too.
Okay.
You know, ones that are maybe just, you know, cost-wise, 50,000 versus $1 million, you know, smaller. City of Waconia, we've helped them over the years with their stormwater reuse program, where they have created their own utility to, in a certain part of town, to serve growing commercial area by capturing stormwater. And then the requirement on those new commercial developments is to use that for irrigation instead of city water. And we helped fund some of those systems to get up and running. Stream bank stabilizations along the Crow River, we did help with those with the city of Watertown. And some smaller projects where City of Norwood doing a redevelopment and looking at treating some additional areas. That's really one of our focuses is older parts of the community that were built before any of these rules were in place and there's redevelopment happening. What can we do to enhance the stormwater treatment there? So that can range from just doing structures in the street to doing more of an underground treatment system. Some of these do get expensive, but we realize that, you know, you gotta put the money in order to get the projects accomplished.
And for the tens and tens of people watching at home, there is also a pot of money if you are personally dealing with these problems and you're in the watershed district, that there's some cost share availability if you have a ravine on your property or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's a good transition. So I think, in terms of our outreach, these are some of the things that, you know, working with your residents and your landowners, what can we do to help? And it's a good point that was made about, we also do a cost share with landowners up to 5,000 for smaller type projects. And those could involve native plantings, it could involve doing something smaller on your property to manage your stormwater. It could involve rain barrel sales. We've done some smaller stormwater reuse where residents have wanted to build a cistern and capture their roof and driveway water and then reuse it, so we helped fund that. There's a lot of examples of things that have happened. I think one of the things we're always curious about is what are your residents needing, wanting? What are you hearing that we could do more outreach and education on? And whether that's through your newsletter, sharing some of the online content we have, 'cause that's an easy way to do it. We can create it, all you have to do is share what we've created, and what is it the city residents are looking for and need. That stormwater pond maintenance that we sent out a while ago was a good example, where we're getting calls, why is my pond green? What should my neighbor do or not be doing on, near their pond? And we can kind of help with some of that education, so maybe the city doesn't have to be dealing with all those requests all the time. So I guess that's where I'll kind of leave it is, what are the other things you might need some assistance with?
Did I hear you say there was or is a program to help with optimizing irrigation systems?
Yeah, there's this Ratio Smart Water program, so we'd give discounts, and it's a private company, but they provide these controllers you can install in your home, and you can run it off your phone and it's based on the weather forecasts and conditions. So you can program your irrigation to water when it needs to and not water when it doesn't need to, based on the size of your lawn and the types of vegetation you have.
And that's something we've participated in
Yes.
for the last handful of years.
Yeah. There's been a lot of interest in that, I think a lot of residents have taken advantage of
Good.
it. We've been trying to measure impact. It's real hard to do that. We were trying to isolate a zone in Chaska that had several people sign up, and could they see water reduction? Problem with that is it depends on the year.
Yeah.
So right after that was one of the drought summers, so it really didn't help with our measurement, but.
We have as you said, we have a lot of development going on, so we have an opportunity as a city to make sure that we are implementing best practices and that we have proper ordinances in place to make sure that we're doing that. You've worked with our developers, do you see any shortfalls that we need to address in the city?
I wouldn't call them shortfalls. I think, again, each development that comes in is very different. We've permitted Fleet Farm, for example, just, Lakeview Industries, and then the school and the apartment buildings. I think each one's unique in terms of, some of them come in and don't understand why they have to do anything. So that's the starting point, and then you go from there. Others are very familiar with their rules, and then it's like just tweaking what they've designed. I think the best thing, from our perspective, the best thing we can do is kind of be in sync with city staff in terms of, yes, you need to do this. And so there's not a triangulation of city, watershed, and developer happening. And that does come up sometimes, and that just makes it harder for everybody. Certainly from our end, I always want to know, like, what are we doing that might be slowing things down or not helping the process? Because we want to try and get the development to meeting the standards, and again, starting to turn dirt as soon as they're able to or wanting to. So, I don't think there's like a overall answer to that. It really varies and depends on the developer. I think some of the things we're doing early on with some of these larger developments are really helping, because you're opening up huge areas, and being able to have a plan for that entire area has really helped.
I would like
For
to
Timber
give,
Creek, it worked fairly well, although some of the phasing, different players got involved in different phasing, and that kind of changed things a little bit, but we worked through it.
I want to give credit to previous councils for the work they did to reserve bluff outlots. One of the things that we've dealt with a couple of times since I've been on the WMO is cities that didn't do that, and now we're having to deal with erosion and other problems on private property. And it's a lot easier to handle those things if you're dealing with city property, and it's a lot easier to prevent them if you're dealing with city property. So I just wanted to give credit to previous councils that had put that in place, because it's saved us a lot of headache. And I was just wondering if there's anything similar that.
That is a big one for us too, because as we, come back and try and manage those bluff areas with property owners that are having issues, then you're trying to fix something after the fact, it's a lot more difficult. I'd say the other one is making sure the ponds are out lots too, because older developments, the lots go across the ponds, and it just makes it really hard to manage anything happening in there. You know, if they have a piece of property on their side of the pond, it's just becomes challenging, so. Yeah, making those ponds out lots really helps. HOAs can present some challenges with, if they're operating the stormwater system, that becomes a challenge. We find it much easier if the cities maintain and operating all the stormwater practices, but I know that's not always possible or the best option. From our perspective, it works better that way.
So I have a question for the topics of interest category here. So it says obviously city collaboration, but does that mean like the city hall, or can homeowners and residents contact you for things on that list?
Yeah, I think that's mostly what we're getting at, is like, these are for your residents and landowners. But
Okay.
what we'd like to collaborate with the city on is getting the word out. So again, if we put together that information, how can you help us get it out? Because you're closer to your residents than we are. So whether it's through social media or a newsletter, getting that word out, but also if you're hearing a consistent question come in, let us know and we can help try and put something together and answer those.
Yeah, we can absolutely, the city's on Facebook and Instagram. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and we're happy to share whatever you guys have. And same thing, I think if we ever got an uptick of calls of, want to do a rain garden, where can I get some money for it?
Yeah.
Or whatever the topic is, we
Yeah.
would send it your way.
And I was actually gonna bring that up, Christy, as an example. We've, as a advisory committee, we've approved funds to do some assistance for private residents who want to install rain gardens, and other native plantings. So there is money available for private residents in addition to the city
Okay.
when it comes to these
Yeah.
things.
Thank you.
Anything else? I don't want to hold you up any longer.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can definitely, come back in a couple of years or sooner if you want to get an update.
Yeah. Eric, anything from you? We have one council member
I'm
person.
good, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I was not aware of goldfish in Chaska, though.
Google it, there's news reports, it's crazy.
And
Yeah.
there are
Totally
trails that
will
are
after
very
this
close
meeting.
to it. Yeah.
We got international news on that one, that was odd.
I was studying abroad in Germany and saw it on the news in Germany,
Yeah.
so.
You go up to behind Costco and that lake there, you can find them.
I can just see next time Eric's at Costco. Thank you so much, Paul.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you, thanks for having
Have a
me.
good night. Okay, moving on. We don't have any public hearings this evening. Can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Councilmember Conrad,
I'll second.
second by Councilmember Sayer. Any further discussion? Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Pasco.
Aye.
Councilmember Conrad.
Aye.
Councilmember Sayer.
Aye.
Councilmember Kirschner.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye, motion passes. No business items, communications. Let's see, what do you got, Kayla?
Planning Commission has been canceled. That's what I've got.
Christie?
I have nothing.
Lori?
No updates today.
Eric?
Nope.
Oh, you guys went too quick. Let's see, my list. Let's see, May 6th, did a hike to the Cheese Cave with the kiddos from the River Wild Learning Center, which was a ton of fun. I thought it was gonna be a little bit too much for their little legs coming from downtown and going all the way up, but they did great. May 6th was also the opening day for Les Schwab, and it's been fun to see them actually be really busy from the get-go. Let's see, there was the Regional Council of Mayors meeting last Monday. I'm having an increasingly hard time to get to those, but this one was at the Minneapolis Federal Reserve Bank, and we had a tour of the cash floor at the end of it, which was super, super cool. And there are these robots that are forklifts that are carrying more cash than I'll ever make in my lifetime. Just really, really cool to see. And then on Friday, we had the Business Alliance meeting that continues to be decently attended. I had Brent send you guys an email that I got yesterday. Despite my best attempts and a very big email campaign the last couple of weekends, we were not included in the 2026 bonding bill for the levy project. So that is a huge bummer. So that's the bad news. The good news is since our last meeting in the last 2 weeks, we've heard from both Klobuchar and Smith's offices that our levy project was on the list that were submitted by their offices to this appropriations committee for funding consideration for the congressionally designated spending for 2027. So still an opportunity to get some money there. So we will see. But that is all I have. I will make a motion. Anything from you, Brent? Okay, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Johnson, second by Councilmember Pasco. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Pasco.
Aye.
Councilmember Conrad.
Aye.
Councilmember Sayer.
Aye.
Councilmember Hirschman.
Aye.
Mayor Johnson.
Aye. Motion passes. Good evening, everybody.